We got a glimpse of Overdress Set 2, and it's actually quite interesting for what we saw for Dragon Empire.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and usually at the end of the week I want to go over all the Card of the Day reviews, which are typically about 5 cards. But in this case, they not only gave us 10 Token Rumble cards, but on top of that, they also gave us the first 4 new cards for the upcoming Set 2 for Overdress. And that included 2 Dragon Empire cards and 2 Dark Stage cards. So in this video, we're gonna cover them all, and I'm gonna focus mainly on the Set 2 cards. But before we can do that, we need to turbo through 10 Token Rumble cards, as we still need to talk about them, and there might be something interesting between them. So with further ado, let's jump straight and plow through all these Token Rumble cards. And we're gonna start off with this great one, which is one of few, because most of the new cards are grade 2s. Which is Horikawa Kunihiro. And Kunihiro has the ability Auto on Rigor Circle. When this unit boosts a token Danshi Uchigatana, cost Soulless 1 and discard a card from your hand. Draw a card, and if it boosted Izumi no Kami Kanesada, this unit gets power plus 5 until the end of turn. So if it boosts a very specific archetype of units, it becomes a cycle card for a soul. And if it then boosts a very specific grade 2, you get an extra 5k power on top of it. It's not a great card, it's basically a cycle with extra cost and extra steps, and then potentially can be a better booster if it paired off with a specific units. It's not that great, and you're gonna see it especially once we take a look at the grade 2 itself, which is of course Izumi no Kami Kanesada, and this unit has the ability Auto Rigor Circle. When this unit attacks while boosted, cost counterless 1. Until the end of the battle, this unit gets power plus 5k. 5k for a counterblast, you know how I feel about it. It's pretty bad. I wouldn't advise for running it. But it also has, and if it was boosted by Horikawa Kunihiro, when your opponent would call cards from their hand, they must call 2 or more at the same time. So it gets the Battle Door effect. And if it's boosted by the grade 1, it's a 28 column that for a counterblast and soul blast gets an extra 10k power, gets a cycle, and then also has the Battle Door effect. Overall, I don't really see the purpose and the need for the Battle Door effect on this column, because it already is 28k's, and in current Overdress standards, that means you're gonna force more than 2 cards anyways, unless they're gonna Perfect Guard. But it's very marginal amount of resources or value you're going to get out of it. So yeah, I'm not too much fan about these 2 cards and the combo between them. Now another grade 2 that we've got is yet again another segment of a 2-card combo, as we've got Ugushimaru. And Ugushimaru has the ability Auto. When this unit is placed on the Rigor Circle, cost counter plus 1. Look at the 7 cards on the top of your deck, choose up to 1 Okanehira from among them, reveal it and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. If you did not reveal a card, counter charge 1. Now it's a top 7 search for a specific card, so if that card is good, you have another way to get consistent access to it, which is great. And interesting on top of it, you will always get the value you're going to pay for it, because if you don't find something, you refund the counterblast you paid up front, so you know you're not going to waste resources, which is a nice added bonus on top of this card. But it still costs you counterblast to get a card to hand, so it all comes down how good this card is. So let's take a look at this card, which is Okanehira, and its ability is Auto on Rigor Circle. When this unit attacks while not boosted, cost discard 2 cards from your hand, choose up to 1 of your units with power greater than this unit, and until the end of the battle, increase or decrease this unit's power until it's 5k greater than that unit's power. So effectively what this card allows you to do is copy the power of another unit that you have, and then get its power plus an extra 5k on top of it, so it becomes a nice beefy number. This works great with, I believe, the Trial Deck Vanguard, because it gets a lot of power, and we've got the right land that can rest multiple units to give itself a lot of power. This synergizes really nicely with that. And yes, the discard 2 sounds like a hefty cost, but as soon as you're gonna get a buttload of power onto this unit, it basically can create a situation where you need to discard 2 cards, but it will then force 5 cards from your opponent's hand. And if that's the type of trade you're gonna make, yeah, then I certainly will say the 2 discard is worth it. But it all comes down to the scenario you're gonna create and what type of situation you find yourself in. So this might be a good card, but also might not. But at the very least, it has a dedicated searcher for it, so that's a nice engine that you can splice into whatever Token Rambu deck you want to build. Now, beyond that, we have another grade 2, which is interesting, as we've got Shokudaikiri Mitsutada, and Shokudaikiri has the ability auto when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle from hand. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, cost counter +1, and all of your front row units get power +5 until the end of turn. This is much better as a counterblast skill for power because you give 3 different units 5k power, and it's also on 3 different attacks, so it will probably give you more value, as your opponent cannot just perfect guard that singular attack and negates all the power gain. It's now spread onto multiple attacks, so that's a nice thing about this card. But it also has the ability, auto on rearguard circle, when this unit attack hits a Vanguard, cost soul +1, choose one of your opponent's front or rearguards and retire it. So it's a nice extra retire option. We got that whole ride line that wants to retire stuff, but that build is mainly focused around back row, so this doesn't really synergize all too much with it, but it's another way to get more retires on the field to disrupt your opponent's play a bit more. Now, next up, we've got an actual very interesting grade 2 that might be very useful for specific builds, as we've got Tsurumaru Kuninaga. And Tsurumaru has the ability, on a rearguard circle, at the end of the battle, this unit attacked. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, cost counter +1 and soul +1, choose one of your other rearguards in the same column as this unit and exchange positions with this unit. So this effectively allows you to get multi-attacks. It's a column switcher, and we have seen ways to empower your rearguard, so this can become a 15k attacker, so it can hit on its own. But if we then combine it with the grade 2, which we just talked about, that can increase its power to whatever unit we have on the board, then we can switch into a unit that can hit for massive numbers on the second attack, even without being boosted, because you get its ability. So there are some nice interactions that we can do with this card, and there are some other options that we're going to talk about in a minute here. So this can be a nice way to increase the multi-attacks, and we already saw another grade 2 that can restand itself for the same cost. So we have multiple ways to increase the amount of attacks we dish out in a singular turn. Now, even though we saw a lot of grade 2s, we have another grade 1 revealed to us, which is this grade 1, Taikogane Sadamune, and Taikogane has the ability auto when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle. If your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, cost counter +1, choose up to 2 cards from your hand and call them to the open rearguard circle. If you call 2, draw a card. I don't really like this card because not only is the 5k body, but effectively it's a counter +1 to draw a card, and this isn't all too bad. It's nice value, but it's a counter +1 to draw a card with insane amount of restrictions and hoops you need to jump through, because not only does this thing need to be replaced onto the rearguard circle from hand, that's a condition, your Vanguard needs to be grade 3, and you need to be able to call 2 cards from your hand to open a rearguard circle to just even get the draw. And that's on top of the fact that it's a 5k grade 1. Yeah, it's a draw engine, but it's definitely not good. There are way better options to just get your counterblast for search abilities, as we have searchers, or just use your counterblast for restanders or multi-attackers. Like, I don't like this card, and I don't think it's going to be played. Maybe there's some hidden potential within this card, but I don't really see it at this point. Maybe we get a thing with multi-attack, but right now we don't have that. Now, another grade 2 that we've got is Okukikara, and its abilities are auto rearguard circle. When this unit attacks while not boosted, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, cost counter +1, and this unit gets power +10k until the end of the battle. If your damage zone has no face-up cards, it gets +15k instead of +10k. Now this synergizes with 2 specific cards, or should I say a specific card in a build. We just talked about the grade 2 that's a column swapper. This synergizes with that because both of those cards have the condition where they must not be boosted. Well, if you're going to column swap 2 grade 2s, that's not going to be the case. But this also synergizes with the Troll deck ride line, where you want to have all your counterblasts face down. This has the same condition and the same effect, so it can also synergize with that playstyle. So this card might actually see some use. Yes, it's a counterblast for a bit power, but in the right circumstance, in the right scenario, it might actually warrant the counterblast for 10k or 15k power, but it all comes down to what the whole deck can do and how much value you can get out of the counterblast. Now we're almost done with the Token Rambu cards, but we have 2 more cards to talk about, which is this grade 2, Sahoya no Tsurugi, and Sahoya no Tsurugi has the ability auto rearguard circle. When this unit attack hits a Vanguard, cost counter +1, and discard a card from hand. Choose one of your Vanguards, search your deck for up to 1 card with the same card name as that unit, reveal it, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. This is basically the Persona Right Searcher for Token Rumble, and they are going to need it because we've seen a lot of cards that synergize with the Persona Right class to activate their abilities or get more value out of their abilities. So this is a very much needed card. Now it does cost a counterblast, which might be an issue as we've seen a lot of counterblast skills, including on the units that rely on Persona Rides, so it depends on your deck and your playstyle if you have the room to play it. But there is a card that directly synergizes this to some extent, which is the final grade 2 card that we're going to talk about for Token Rumble, which is also incidentally the last Token Rumble card for today, which is Sancho Mo. And Sancho Mo has the ability, although when this unit is placed on a rearguard circle, if you Persona Road this turn, counter charge 1. So the previous grade 2 that we just talked about searches it for a counterblast. This then, the following turn, if you Persona Road, can immediately get you the counter blast back for free. Now, this is a 2-card combo where you can basically get to your Persona Ride effectively for free. It does cost a turn for you to get it, unless you already Persona Road that turn, and you can immediately get it back. And that also brings us to another way how you can use this card. You can just run it in whatever Token Rumble build that you want if you need to counter charge, because if you just are able to Persona Road just normally by drawing into a copy the hard way, or just normally without any issue, then this is basically a counter charge on demand. So depending on your playstyle and how lucky you feel yourself that you can get away with running this card in your list, it all will have to play out, and we have to see if this card is good enough as a generic counter charge, or it has to be paired off with the grade 2 we just talked about that can forcefully activate this ability to get to your Persona Route every single turn. But with those Token Rumble cards reveals out of the way, let's get into the spicy things of now. As we surprisingly got reveals for set 2 for Overdress, which is of course a brush with the legends. And the first reveals, well, half of them were kind of exciting, but I'm gonna be real here. They are pretty weak and bad in comparison to what we already got in the nation support from the first wave. But for the Dragon Empire ones, they do tell a very interesting story. And we're gonna start off with that grade 1 for Dragon Empire, which is Blaze Maiden Zara. And Blaze Maiden Zara has the ability continues a rearguard circle. During your turn, if Blaze Maiden Ryu or Blaze Maiden Reno is on your Vanguard circle, rearguard circle, this unit gets power plus 5k. So on turn 1 and turn 2, this becomes an 11k booster, because those are going to be your Vanguards 100% of the time, if you're going to play the Overdress deck. She being an 11k booster is fine. It can also be an 11k attacker. It allows you to be a bit more aggressive in the early game, and it does make Reno as a 12k finally mean something, because 12 plus 11 is 23, so you finally hit a magic number. So she does have the early aggression just like Reno as a attacker, because she can become a 10k or higher, and she becomes a really nice booster for Reiju, but you're not gonna play Reiju in the main deck and mainly as a ride deck. But this does change a little bit if we're gonna take a look at the second Blaze Maiden that was revealed for set 2, because now we're actually gonna see a very interesting concept that could be the start of a engine for Dragon Empire, or should I say the Blaze Maiden engine itself. Because the second card that got revealed is Blaze Maiden Tanya, and Tanya has the ability Auto. When this unit is placed on the rearguard circle, cost, counterblast 1, choose a grade 0 card from your drop and call to the rearguard circle. And it has the ability Auto rearguard circle. When this unit attacks, cost, Soul Blast 1, choose one of your grade 0 units and it gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So this card allows us to resurrect grade 0s from the drop to the field for a counterblast. This is basically the same ability that we saw on Nirvana, where we can resurrect Trickster to the field for a discard as we don't lose on a card value. In this case, we gain card value as we don't need to discard. And depending on what build we play, we might not have the need for the counterblast. A good example of this is Eugene. Eugene, there's a variant where you're gonna play Overdress with Eugene and you mix it a little bit, and Eugene doesn't really use a lot of counterblast depending on how you build it. But the issue is with Eugene, if you lose your Tricksters, you're done. You have no way to resurrect them onto the field. So it's a bit of risky play if you're gonna overload with too many Overdress cards. Now with Tanya in the mix, suddenly we can reuse those Trickstars because we can resurrect them from the drop zone, and suddenly we have more ammunition for the Eugene Overdress hybrid deck, and makes the deck also a bit more consistent. So this is an interesting concept that can be applied for Eugene. But there's another interesting aspect to this card, because this card has the secondary effect where we can give those grade 0s extra 5k power. Now you might think to yourself, what's the point of doing that? Because if you're gonna resurrect Trickstar, you want to overdress immediately. Now, of course, in certain situations, you might not be able to do that. And then this as a card allows you to turn those tricksters into 10k attackers or potentially 10k boosters, thus increasing the columns on the field. But you can then say, well, why would you play this card in the overdress deck? Because the overdress deck will just resurrect it with Nirvana and then immediately overdress it into another unit, so there's no need to play Tanya, because the counterblast cost is also not worth it for the overdress build. And this is where we get into the whole Blaze Maiden engine argument, because we see Reiju and Reno as solid attackers. We have a 12k attacker and a 10k attacker, which can be a bit more aggressive. There was no point for the 12k attacker until we just got Zara, which is an 11k booster, which can make your Reijus into 23k columns. Now this is nice because this is generic support for whatever Dragon Empire deck you might play. This isn't mainly a overdress argument. And if we go to Eugene lacks good rearguards that can make solid numbers, and suddenly Eugene can now use this Blaze Maiden numbers and this archetype support to create actual beatable colors without relying on your opponent having a field or not. But that's not everything, because now we get back to the point of Tanya with being able to give your Trickstars plus 5k power. You don't really need to give Trickstar the plus 5k power, because Tanya can also Soul Blast your starter, which can be Sunrise Egg, and Sunrise Egg, or your generic starters, are 6k. Giving them 5k turns them into 11k attackers or boosters, and we once again have an 11k, which can make our Reijus into 23k columns. And that then also brings us back to the artwork of Tanya, as we can see the egg in the background, which somewhat tells us that this maybe is a focus around this card, that's the intention of this card, not only to apply for Trickstar, but mainly to just get our starter as an aggressive beater or an attacker that can then make solid numbers. Now again, I'm not telling you that this is going to be the new meta or this is going to be the best build, but this is an engine around the Blaze Maidens, around Reiju, about Zara, about Tanya, as well as Reno, where you can use these cards to utilize your Trickstar with potentially overdress or your starters to just create solid 10k, 20k, 23k numbers in the early game consistently without relying on whatever engine you need. And this can be splashed in whatever build you play. Of course, Overdress will not use this all too much because Overdress want to play Overdress decks, but Eugene can definitely benefit from an engine like this. And future builds might also potentially benefit from this, because this is much more aggressive than the Overdress deck itself. These new Blaze Maidens, they just want to go ham, create those numbers, attack every single turn with 3 attacks that all hit over magic numbers, and keep churning them out turn after turn after turn. So that's much more aggressive, that can also benefit particular playstyles. But that's the 2 reveals that we got for Dragon Empire. Now the final 2 reveals that we got for Dark States are definitely way less interesting, because we can summarize these cards within 1 card. But let's first talk about these cards before I'm going to tell you that part. So first off, we got this grade 2, Diabolus Edge Grantley. And Grantley has the ability, act on rearguard circle, cost Soulless 1. Until the end of turn, your opponent cannot intercept, and if you are in Final Rush, this unit gets power plus 5k. I'm not a fan of this card because it's basically a Richard from the right line that needs to pay a Soul Blast to even get the 5k power, whereas Richard just gains it for free. Yes, you block your opponent from intercepting, but how much is it actually gonna worth in the end? I don't think it's gonna be a lot, and you much rather want to save up your soul for the Soul Blast 5, or maybe just for other skills that can draw you cards or whatever. I don't really think that this is worth it. The other card that we've got is this grade 2, Diabolus Madonna Viola, and it has the ability, auto rearguard circle, when this unit attacks, if your Vanguard is Diabolus Violence Bruce, cost Counterblast 2, and this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. Again, it's not a great card. 2 Counterblast for 10k power, it's really bad, and it's also again a card that lacks early potential because you need to be on Bruce, so it's a turn 3 at earliest. Yes, you can do it potentially for Final Rush, but if we're gonna go that route, I can tell you that Grantley and Viola are both cards not worth it to play, because we already got a card that's both these cards and better in the previous set, in the Festival Collection, as we've got Jared in the Festival Collection. This is a grade 2 that for a Counterblast and the Soul Blast can give any Diabolus cards 10k power, and then in our Final Rush turns, can then block our opponent from not intercepting. It's literally both these cards in one, but then cheaper, because if you combine these 2 cards, it's Counterblast 2 and a Soul Blast, whereas Jared's is Counterblast 1 and a Soul Blast. But on top of that, Jared can do it on turn 2, and then turn 3, and then turn 4 whenever we need it. And it can give the 10k power to any unit that we want, which can be Eden, which again is a card with an unhit effect that's actually very powerful, and it restands with its extra critical, so there's more value behind giving it the power than just Jared himself. So there is no real reason for Grandly and Viola to even exist. Yes, it can be low budget potential, but I think Jared being a triple R, the festival collection doesn't really mean anything, as I think the card will be easy to pull. So yeah, these cards are definitely way less interesting than we've got for the Blaze Maidens for Dragon Empire. But that said, we talked about all the cards that were revealed for the card of the day. Yes, these were way more reveals than usual. As I said, we typically only get one card a day, but in this case, we got 2 a day, and then Thursday and Friday, we got 4 cards in a day. So yeah, there were a lot of cards to talk about. Now, again, I want to clarify, probably a lot of you will say, well, the Blaze Maiden cards, they are really bad. The 11k numbers don't really mean anything. Reno and Reiju, you're not going to play them in the main deck. And I hear you. I agree with most of those sentiments. But keep in mind, they do create a very interesting, unique engine that might be useful for different decks that we might not see just yet. But yes, it's not good for the Overdress deck. You're probably not going to play them in the Overdress build because we have better options already present in set 1. But that said, let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below for these new cards. Are you excited about the prospect of set 2 reveals already being here? So who knows when we're gonna get more exciting double orbs or triple orbs for the set. Probably in a week or 2, I think. For now, we're gonna probably see mostly commons. But who knows? Maybe Bushiroad will throw us a curveball and we suddenly get one of the main cards revealed next week. It's all random at this point, so let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!